Hello and welcome to the 27th Annual Get Lit Festival. I'm Kate Peterson, Director of Get Lit Programs, a nonprofit organization housed within Eastern Washington University. Our program is responsible for Get Lit, Washington State's longest-running annual literary festival, which hosts dozens of free and low-cost readings, craft classes, panel discussions, and many more exciting literary events. This year's headlining authors are Maggie Smith, Lee Young Lee, and Dinez Smith. We're thrilled to be hosting in-person events featuring those headliners alongside over 60 talented writers from our region and beyond. The festival takes place this Thursday through Sunday, April 10th through the 13th in many venues across downtown Spokane, Cheney, and even Coeur d'Alene. And we're excited to be presenting 8 virtual events here on YouTube this year. You can find our full schedule along with information about all of our festival authors by visiting our website, getlitfestival.org. Now I'd like to welcome Mackenzie Draper, GetLit's Assistant Coordinator, who will introduce today's event.
We're proud to welcome you to Celebrating EWU MFA Alumni. Today we will hear published poetry straight from 5 Eastern MFA graduates. After hearing some of the wonderful work our alumni are publishing, they will engage in a conversation with festival intern and current fiction MFA student Emily Ladd about their lives after the program, answering some of the what next questions we're faced with after graduation. Before we dive into the readings, I'll introduce our moderator, Emily Ladd. Emily is a writer with a short attention span. At any given time, they may be working on several different novels, a few short stories, and 3 cups of coffee all at once. Emily received their bachelor's degree in art and communication and celebrated by immediately jumping headfirst into Eastern's creative writing MFA. Their passions include organizing local writing meetups, moonlighting as a dog trainer, and exploring different ways to cook potatoes. Thanks so much for moderating today, Emily.
Thanks, Mackenzie, and thank you, Emily. I'm looking forward to that conversation. So let's get started with our first reader, Rob Carney. Rob is the author of the essay collection Accidental Gardens and 9 books of poems, most recently The Book of Drought, which won the X.J. Kennedy Prize for Poetry and received a Kirkus Starred Review. He has received the Milton Kessler Memorial Prize, the Robinson Jeffers Tour House Foundation Award for Poetry, and he has written a featured series called Old Roads, New Stories for the award-winning journal Terrain.org for the last 9 years. His favorite drink is coffee. His favorite animal is the great white shark. He is a professor of English at Utah Valley University and lives in Salt Lake City. Please welcome Rob.
Am I unmuted now? Okay. So I'm going to read one of the sections, movements from the Book of Drought. It's a book-length poem, 8 movements, 8 parts per movement. And this is one that starts like this. Back when water was an element, hydrologists would measure things. The depth of the rivers, aridity of soil cores, the sorrow of glaciers as they faded, disappeared. They had inches and acre feet and flashes of level-headed anger. Remember when you used to go cliff jumping? My advice is don't. I'm saying they had numbers, stacked data. All I've got are buckets down a well. Just some language at the bottom if I'm lucky. Like maybe I can pull up another word for zero. Then some other words too. A whole sentence that sounds a bit like hope. They held a vote. I'm the one they elected. To be the listener and reservoir and scribe, the one who records this. Say, the green of a hummingbird's feathers as it hovers, and the shape-shift purple when it moves. Say, the sound of a lake against a boat dock, like tucking in a child, or like slosh whenever wakes come rolling. Write it all, they tell me, so I fill up the margins. It can't be yet another thing that lets them down. But the past tense is everywhere. How long, for instance, since a hummingbird's been spotted? How long since we couldn't just walk across the lake? The bed of it cracked now, bed of it dust, dance partner of the wind if the wind were a cough. Nobody knows since we don't count back. All the seasons mean subtraction already. No snow in the winter months, feathering through lamplight. No rain in the spring months and cold drops running down your shirt. It began with a shiver, she says, as if I knew this tulip was the last one I'd see in my yard. Not the cold outside. I had a jacket on, but that shiver, when you're surprised. I kept looking at that flower, that red, so I wouldn't forget. He tells me the wind is what gets us, especially at night with so many trees dead now. We think we hear the baby crying, but the baby's fine. There's just no leaves anymore. No leaves for that sway sound and rustle. When the wind cuts through, it makes a pitch the same as crying. Don't ask me yet about the animals. You're right, but don't ask about the animals. The world was the world, and beautiful, but lonely. Valleys divided the mountains, each from each. The sky had the sun and the moon and light connecting them. The ocean had tides joining in and out like song, two voices in harmony. No, only the mountains had to go through life apart, so the world sent clouds to be an answer. The clouds brought snow, a shared blanket through the winter, and the snow piled deep, a shared dream. And in the spring, as the days warmed, the mountains woke to find rivers, and those rivers braided the mountains into one. Back when water was an element, that story didn't need telling. Now, when I do, I see sadness in some, or disbelief. A few of them talk to me. Words like they're filling up a river. Words I've been picked to remember and pass on to you. That's it.
Thank you, Rob. Our second reader is Leanne Birkin. Originally from Minnesota, Leanne holds an MFA in creative writing from Eastern Washington University. A former journalist, freelance writer, and mermaid performer, she has temporarily traded her fins for legs in order to better keep up with her toddler. Her chapbook, Ordinary Omens, was published by the Poetry Box Press in 2024. Her poetry has also appeared in Miracle Magazine, The Inlander, Spokane Coeur d'Alene Living Magazine, and many online publications, including Devilfish Review. When not seeking inspiration, she can be found at home snuggling with her husband Steve, daughter Aowen, and cat Tiki. Please welcome Leanne.
Thank you. So I have 3 poems for you. These are all from my collection, Ordinary Omens, and they center around exploring those small moments that linger with us. So encounters, rituals, relationships that shape how we see ourselves and the world. Sometimes what seems ordinary can hold more weight than we expect. This first poem is about an unexpected encounter with something small and fragile and how it stirred something deeper. The rabbit. When I saw the baby cottontail running fast along the sidewalk, streetlights reflected in his eyes, I remembered that night we made frantic love on the roof of your van, warm metal pressed against my thighs, unprotected in the summer heat. With me on my back, did you see the falling stars reflected in my eyes? Feel the wild heartbeat in my chest building to a shining scream? We talked until sunrise, anxious, wondering if we created a mistake, making promises and choosing names. I'd forgotten all of it until I saw him, passing through dappled light, no grass, just warm pavement under paws. His frantic movements, his wide and fearful eyes, and oh, how I ached to love so small a thing. So there are some moments that feel like they should hold power, like a wish made at just the right time could change everything. But what if you don't know what to wish for? Or worse, what if you choose wrong? This next poem focuses on that. Birthday candles. She can't remember what it was she wanted, and there's only one chance, once a year. It probably seems silly, but ever since she realized she's pretty, she wanted to stay young and beautiful. Find the fountain, drink the cure. Well, a girl can dream, but a woman starts to see too many candles and not enough air. She notices the wax falling onto those sweet frosted peaks, sliding down slowly, a masterpiece that's melting. The song begins to end, and everyone is staring expectantly. She inhales, the heat building in her face. One chance, no chance. Make a wish, they say. Make a wish. And lastly, some rituals that we have in life are deliberate and filled with expectation, like birthday candles, but others can happen without us realizing. Things like a glance from the right person, but when it's repeated again and again, it can be enough to change everything. This is Blue Eyes. Your eyes are blue, like the blueberries neither of us want in muffins. Even when we've argued, you circle back, a distant planet whose contrite cobalt atmosphere calls out to me. The soft weight of icy fingers molding my fevered skin. It's disastrously delicious and interestingly addictive. This is old school love potion magic. An arrow in the moonlight piercing the heart. I know I shouldn't forgive you just because you have amazing blue eyes. I just can't think of a better reason. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Leanne. Our next reader is Kimberly Lambright. Kimberly's second poetry collection, Doom Glove, was published in 2024 by Problem Press. She is also the author of Ultra Cabin, winner of the 42 Miles Press Poetry Prize. She is a MacDowell Colony Fellow, and her poetry appears in Phoebe, Columbia Poetry Review, Ziziva, Bone Bouquet, the Burnside Review, and elsewhere. Please welcome Kimberly.
Hi, I'm going to be reading from my new book of poems, Doom Glove. Vanishing Point. It's evening and the neat lemon trees glamor up, lug their own myth to the party. This is the last time I ask for it. The reverb lamplight, holy as it is, needs cellular turnover in the form of my future. I'm not even old yet. All this sitting gloss in my box. The speckled brook of my imagination claps on. My stray scent digs into you. Don't say it doesn't. A mild, salty dark. My color is blush. I'm all prelude, honey, having a moment in the kitchen. Out the window, the opal night ribbons around us like slush love, and we continue to mean what we say. Book of Life. Sister, it's flooding sunshine. Days drop like caramels. I turned my back on you, on the hunted dogs of our girlhood. Here's the devil coming from my palm, the mad raisins and relished dirt. I'm in the open, the cream soda bad. Is rubber your only feeling? Wooded and measured out, you stomach the untried, the vanilla pudding that won't feed you. Why did you take orders? A cube of hesitations, the learned magic won't leave us. And I think I'll end with this longer one. It's called Reckoning. I didn't stop being useful to you. A film of wind adjusts the air in the front room. Fresh out of the mountain, I don't like the sea, how it's only me, a face of water closing. I've upped my come down. I used to think the return was made up, but now I've spent all this time returning. Atop pine trees, the sky's a bruised turquoise. Your lick, its pale secrets. I like how you described my face. Sob. I looked up your second wedding photos. There's a lot to forgive, but we're alive. I read about the past inside the present until 2 a.m. Talked about language, its divorce o'clock. Talked about desire, overly locked rooms. On the topic of your contrived behavior, were you simply concealing the excess of your interest? This time I want to win. I'm post-recreation. I'm a petal pink misdemeanor. I'm a system of colors. I'm night coffee. Like the cage doll, I want the baby seal. The married guy goes home, and I eat the blood of trees. This is like a better cupcake, like the stripe, now sharp, down the left half. I felt so easy in college, a dorm of noodles, little constellations of baby feelings for baby boys. This is like khaki pavilions, the time around this, nesting in the supple beam of hair. The trees aren't real, just catastrophic portals of emerald. That's the thing about abuse sometimes. You don't feel abused, you feel special. On the plane, I looked at photos from last year, before the wedding. You were in a sweater vest and tie at the rehab holiday party. I felt better to see you like this. My sheer misbehaving brain feeling the damage in categories. Rose pretty light down the canyon, my old path of dark rot. Here's the catalog of my bullshit. I like thinking about when you wanted me. I like it more than anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. Our fourth reader, Sunny Brown Wilkinson, is a poet and essayist. Her second full-length poetry collection, Rodeo, was selected by Patricia Smith as winner of the Donald Justice Poetry Prize and will be published this year by Autumn House Press. Sunny's other books are The Marriage of the Moon and the Field and The Ache and the Wing. Her poetry has been awarded a Sundress Chapbook Prize, New Ohio Review's Norward Poetry Prize, the Joy Harjo Prize, and the Sherwin Howard Award. She teaches at Weber State University and lives in northern Utah with her husband and 3 sons. Please welcome Sunny.
I'm going to read 3 poems from my new collection, Rodeo, and it's an interesting collection for me to read aloud because several of the poems deal with grief, and then the rest of the poems really deal with falling back in love with the world again after intense grief. So just for some context, my husband and I have 3 sons. Our 4th son was stillborn, so it was a really difficult experience. And I'm grateful that I was able to write poems that, as the famous scripture says, make beauty out of ashes. I think that's one good thing that can come out of grief, is that you do your best to do that. So this is a sestina called Grief Sestina, and it is for my husband. I met a woman who'd been struck by lightning. She held herself like a firefly when she told me. That's something, I thought. She was now her own gold. I was pregnant then, 4th boy, more full moon than ever. But all that beautiful milk went sour when he died. The stuttering milk that dripped from me, lightening each day, and by the time the moon waned, so had I. What came out next was fire, and like a wild man digging for gold, you searched for me nights when I left something cold out for dinner, turned some thin line into a stone wall. Love, drink this milk of our grief with me. Tell me the days are gold, and though I push you away, let the lightning of you find the dry tree of me. And after fireflies rise from our bed, strike dumb the brutish moon. Forget the hospital machine, blank as the moon behind clouds, the night we turned into something we couldn't name. Let's reclaim the days of first fire, when in our house of futons and cheap milk, we rang each other like bells, like strands of lightning. Love, how the river of you washed me. Oh, the gold in your beard then, and the gold in the finches winging endlessly against the moons of our windows. I come humbly in the lightning of my grief now. I eat the cold crumbs of something we made together and lost. The chipped glass of milk rattling in my hands burns me like the longest fire. This simple meal of our life, more fire than water in our fractured bodies, love, stuff gold into the hands of strangers, spill the milk of your laughter, anchor the moon in your quiet hands, and give me something to believe in again, even a dogged, tenuous light, and say it, we've been struck by lightning. That milky gold something that's changed us, made us strange, the moon on fire. So that's my sad poem. That's my grief poem. The other two are a little lighter. The wonderful thing about writing a book of poetry also is that you find a way to weave together the hard and the beautiful and realize they're not that far apart from each other. This one is called Envy. Early this morning, mid-December, when all the pre-dawn creatures hunt and cry and patter their delicate feet in snow, and every breathing thing leaves ghosts behind them in the air, I heard an owl outside the kitchen window, winged and cloaked in velvety dark, while I sat dumbly at my desk. All day, a small grief has not ceased to chafe my heart. And the last one is titled Jenny's Slot Canyon Evening, Late November. And it is one of the only non-terrible sonnets I've ever written. This is also for my husband, Sean. These desert canyon walls are black from years of rain. The water paints it so and stains the varnish dark, a kind of anguish we weren't here to see. This place a rib cage, slick and tight, each wave of rock a rung to climb, a foothold carved from wind's fine blade. We too are wild and honeycombed. The fissures deep inside us know too well the pains of age. In this monastic space, where light and dust conspire and ruminate, we face ourselves, our bodies brittle, tinged with slow decay. But in the winter light, in day's last rays of gold, our suns are bright and manifold. We'll tell our love until the telling's old. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunny. Our final reader tonight is Laura Stott. Laura is the author of 3 books of poetry, including the poetry and painting collaboration, Blue Nude Migration, In the Museum of Coming and Going, and most recently, The Bear's Mouth. Her poems have been published in various journals and anthologies, including Swim, River Heron Review, and Terrain.org. At Weber State University in Northern Utah, Laura teaches poetry and printmaking and creative writing. Please welcome Laura.
Hi. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. And this has been such a pleasure and such an honor to read with all of you. And I'm going to read a few poems out of here. I know it's flipped, but The Bear's Mouth and Out with Link's House Press last October. And it's nice to read back to back with Sunny. She's a kindred spirit in lots of ways, and the content of our books, like we both share a similar experience with losing a baby. So anyway, the first poem I'm going to read is titled Monster. Spider webs by the back door funnel into a black cave, a silk and nocturnal universe where a fanged creature waits for the moon's threaded children, a moth, a mantis fly, to step gently into the tangle of reflection. Mother spider wraps her legs lovingly around all her young and whispers, "This is the earth you are waiting to be born into. Dream of the wings you'll eat. and kingdoms between roses. Opening. I walk the cemetery where your tiny body must have raised up from the incinerator as smoke. Your hands, the size of coins, disappeared faster than any of us can imagine. I'd like to imagine them turning into hands perfectly a second time, uncurling in the light. Starlings hide in the trees, shouting, the sound I catch, but I can't see the hundreds of wings folded there. Loud and hopeful things. This morning, I opened the door of my home before the murmur, before the dust cloud of bone and ink rose in the shape of an animal, a black well in the sky that sings. There's more than one poem in the book titled The Bear's Mouth. This is the first poem I wrote titled The Bear's Mouth. And the bear, I got really bear obsessed for a number of years, and I still am, but I just kept returning and just really fascinated with these giant creatures that, well, I don't even need to say why, but the bear's mouth. The earth just got smaller than the brains of the ants living under the tomatillo in the crack of the patio. This isn't their dream of sugar and sand. In Los Angeles, an alligator lizard soaks up sun in the backyard of Sunset Boulevard. Banana trees thrive in this city that gets smaller but has more people moving in. The coastal temperate rainforests of Tasmania and Alaska are shrinking. Spruce trees sigh, undeniably blue. Next to a silver river, the lichen grows 1 millimeter per year, and the false azalea smells like skunk. But it reminds you of your childhood. All those summer nights when you opened a sliding door to the stink of an animal somewhere in the dark. The jaws of the bear unhinge. On the beaches of France, the world is larger than it has ever been. Orlando is carrying 5,000 times its weight, and those who march are filling every banquet hall with song. And sparrows carry the mantra straight into the heart. Soon, the entire world will fit inside the brown bear's mouth. Imagine stepping on the tongue. The jaws are ready. But in the belly of the bear, everyone is weeping and laughing with every neighbor we don't have. We've been walking for centuries and crawled right in. And I'll just finish with this one. When you crawl outside of the bear, you will always try to crawl back in. Even when the world stops spinning and a blue heron rises in front of you like a dream you once had, or the spirit of someone you love. In the middle of a sunny afternoon at the water's edge, a walk you're taking to see birds, something passing through on its way to another world, somewhere sunnier, probably. In your hand, a fly rod, something to draw all the secrets out of the water, if only a bite, a strike. There's always a bear, even when there isn't a bear. And there it is, the fish caught on the bank, wriggling in the sunlight. Sometimes the hook is out before you're even on your knees. Hold the fish underwater, feel it catch its breath in your hands before it disappears into some shadow place, somewhere you can't fit into. Not yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Now that we've heard from all of you, let's turn things over to Emily to lead us in a discussion of life after the MFA program.
Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to get to meet everybody and have this discussion with you today. I have worked really hard to make sure my questions are applicable for both our current students and any audience members who might potentially be interested in an MFA program like Eastern's. So for any audience members who aren't familiar, with Easter's program in particular, students have a lot of opportunities to intern for different professional practicum and get hands-on experience in different writing-related fields, including literary magazines, indie publishing, community engagement, and event organization. So I'm really curious, during your time in this program, did you participate in any of the program's practicum? And how did those experiences affect your career? Feel free to unmute yourselves.
Is it starting with me then?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Yes and no. One of the things that you're talking about is the Get Lit Festival that did not exist when I was at Eastern. That was created by a friend of mine named Scott Poole, and he started the program after I had already moved away from Spokane. Willow Springs, yeah, I was on the staff of that. There was no EWU press yet either, other than Jim McCauley wanted it to be revived or started for the first time. But at that time, it was just him. And the first book they made was Paula Meehan's collection, The Man Who Was Marked by Winter. I did, however, get to do something, and I don't know if it still exists at Eastern, the study abroad program in the summertime over in Dublin. And that's how I had met Paula Meehan. She was one of the 3 teachers we had. And also when The Man Who Was Marked by Winter was published the next year, I got a chance to interview her off in a side room at a party that Macaulay was hosting after her reading. So she's very small. I am not. And we were sitting in a toddler's room to do the interview in these tiny little chairs, which made me feel sort of like a gargantuan weirdo doing this poetry interview in a toddler's room in a chair that didn't fit me. But so I did get to do some things, maybe unique things, but other things that are available now didn't exist yet because I'm talking about having been a student there from 1990 to 1992.
I can go next. Uh, so kind of ironically, since this is a Get Lit event, Get Lit was the one part of the intern stuff that I wasn't really involved in as much, but I did do the Lit magazine, the small press, and writers in the community. And I feel like maybe part of the reason I wasn't quite as involved with Get Lit was because I felt like they all kind of intersected with some of the stuff Get Lit was doing pretty well at some points. But one thing that I felt was a good thing about doing all 3 was that they all had such good connections with the Spokane community and teaching us ways of applying our writing skills to ways of impacting others and helping others. So some of the things that I learned within each of the internships, I feel like I still come back to today, whether I'm helping plan a workshop or participating in one or submitting to a magazine or a publishing house, my manuscript, just things that I keep in mind from being a part of those programs.
When I was doing the program, I took 3 different internships, and I learned different things from each of them. Willow Springs was great, just basically giving me a perspective of what the journals and editors experience when I send my poems to them. So kind of from the opposite point of view. I think like it gave me a lot of confidence to send up my work after I was finished with the program, like 5 years later when I felt like I was ready. Just knowing what that process was like from the inside was much less intimidating and mysterious. And then kind of same thing with EWU Press when I was ready to send my manuscript out like 10 years after the program. I'd had hands-on experience from the other side, like reading through the slush pile, and it just seemed more doable than like the great unknown to send out my work. And then I also did writers in the community and was paired up with, I forget what her name was, but a professor at Spokane Community College for a creative writing class for freshmen. And it taught me that I did not want to be a professor, which was really valuable to know. And I've never taught writing since, and I think that that's just fine. So it's just really good to get that hands-on experience and just sort of know what was out there and what clicked with me.
Laura, do you want to answer next? Sunny's having some connection issues.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. I was the managing editor of Willow Springs when I was there, and it was incredibly helpful to me as a writer to I you learn a lot as an editor when you're going through so many submissions. I think it teaches you a lot on the submission process, but also with your own poetry and things to get fine-tuned in on. So that in that practical sense, that was helpful. I feel like I did a lot of focus on the editing side of things, and I was just, oh man, I love making books. This is so fun. and I really thought when I left the MFA program that I would go more that direction as far as like finding a job. But I didn't. And I did end up teaching, and I love being able to teach. But all the time, constantly, I am referring to uh, just everything I learned in my MFA. So I can't say enough about how much it has helped me and influenced my job now. So
Awesome. Sunny, did you have an opportunity to participate in any practicum while you were here?
Yeah, sorry about that. We got a ton of snow today, so
No worries.
having some problems. Yeah, I did writers in the schools or writers in the community, which I loved. And I don't know if Laura just mentioned this, but right now through Weber State, we actually go sometimes into the local schools and do little reading stuff with them and give them a writing prompt and teach them a little bit about poetry. I loved it. I think that was my favorite thing that I did at Eastern was being able to work with younger kids and get them excited about poetry. The young kids are already excited. So tapping into the elementary school spirit of it's so cool to write poetry is my favorite. And I go into my son's schools all the time and have worked with them. So that's been helpful. I used a lot of the strategies that I learned doing writers in the community with Weber. And then I did help with Willow Springs just a little bit. I was an editor, and that was a great experience. But then I also did a little bit of student teaching as well, just as I think an extra initiative. And I thought, I don't know if I'll ever use this, but it's turned out to be super useful because that's what I teach now. So I go back, I reflect a lot back on what I learned early in the classroom and classroom management and encouraging students and getting conversations going about poetry and teaching techniques. So yes, I have used two of the three things that I did through Eastern, I still use today. So they've been very, very helpful.
Awesome. Awesome. It's something as someone who participates in, I have my fingers in every single pot. I'm kind of participating very mildly in every single practicum. So it's something I'm really curious to see in the future how I look back on this, and how the things that I'm doing right now will shape my career as still like a fairly young writer. So I'm a first year student, but right now we're 3 months away from graduation for our second students. So I'm curious if you have any advice for them to keep in mind as they move out of the program and on with this next stage in their careers.
Well, when the program's over, yeah, you're not going to have deadlines given to you, mandated by anybody else. So you're going to have to do that. And the focus is going to be a little bit different because you're not going to have a group of people who care about a similar thing around you so much. So you're going to have to care even more on your own. You should stay in touch with them because, or with other writers, because it's nice to still have some sort of group, even if it's just through email. But you're also going to get swamped by routine. And your routine is going to be different. It's not going to be graduate school. It's not going to be reading, writing, going to events. Your routine is going to be duller, probably. So it's just going to be on you. And you got to have that kind of self-discipline to stick at it because it'll be easy to drift if you don't?
I guess I was going to kind of say similar, that you should do what you can to stay active in some kind of writing community, whether that's staying in touch with friends and colleagues, or getting involved with writing groups or projects, and just reading your work at open mic nights, whatever you can do to kind of stay inspired and involved with the craft. And try not to get too discouraged by having a regular job or a different routine, and not being as surrounded by the creative flow as you maybe were used to.
Yeah, I love what everyone has said. So when I graduated, I moved to Portland and just got a job proofreading at an accounting firm, just so I would have like a steady 9 to 5. I would have that structure, be able to pay my bills. And then I just spent a lot of my time outside of that job, just at Powell's writing and drinking coffee and reading and going to readings. And I think if you can just like get a structure in your life that allows you to be a writer, so you don't have to worry about how things are going to look, if that makes sense. Like, I think that was really helpful. And then just turning inward is totally fine. I mean, I think after the program, it was kind of a relief not to share my work all the time and just work on it in like with privacy. And I was reading a lot of Louise Gluck, and just, it's okay to have that like burrowing back into your own private self for a couple of years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would say that I am extra lucky because Laura's still in my life. We both ended up at Weaver State. We're both near Ogden, and she's in my writing group. There are only 3 of us. So I get to see and talk to Laura regularly. And I have deadlines. I have with our poetry group, we have to have something. You're usually 2 poems in every month. And I turn in some embarrassing work sometimes, but I turn it in. So it keeps me on a schedule. Before I got into that regularly, though, I really had to work on it by myself, and I did not do a very good job. So I do think connecting to community is huge. I remember, and I'm sure I've said this before, but I found it really helpful to remember that it doesn't matter what your day job is. That's what Chris Howe told me in graduate school. He said, I don't really care what you do during the day. It doesn't matter what you make money doing, but you don't give up being a writer. And I thought that was really helpful. And I stuck with that. And several years after graduate school, I was married and having kids, and it was really difficult to write while I had a house of little kids. But I held on to that and thought, okay, I'm whatever my day job is, even if it's changing diapers and teaching part-time, I'm still going to write. So I would wake up early in the mornings and write and just put out something. And that is, I honestly think, the only reason I got any books published, is because I just had to force myself to make the time. And it is amazing how easy it is to not make the time. So if you make it a priority and just keep going, that's really the key.
I think everyone has said something that I would say. So ditto to everybody. And so I'll maybe focus on this. When I was graduating and finishing up, I think one of my last meetings with my thesis advisor, who was Christopher Howell, and I asked Chris, I said, what advice do you have, finishing up the program? And he said, take yourself out of your comfort zone. It was his advice, just do things that are going to make you uncomfortable, that are different. And I think that can be applied to your writing, to what you're reading, and just life. Just being willing to try new things and get out there. And a couple months ago, I was stuck in the cold at a train station. And it was dark, and I had to pass the time for a half hour. And I started listening to some Ross Gay, and I wrote down something I heard him say. And he said, my hope is that I'm always doing something that I don't know how to do. That is my hope as a writer. And I feel like I've been hearing that from more than one place recently, just trying to just constantly expand and read widely. And if you don't know how to do it, try it and do it.
Awesome. That sounds like really fantastic advice. I'm grateful. I still have a whole nother year to, that idea of graduation is terrifying right now, over a year away. So good luck to them for sure, for sure. So kind of along what Sunny was saying, are there any pieces of writing advice, knowledge, tips that you learned during the MFA program that have really stuck with you since? And that can be specific or really general, just anything that really stayed with you.
Well, okay, to pick one from taking classes with Nance Van Winkle and one from taking classes with Jim McCauley, um, specifically form and theory kinds of classes with him. Um, I wasted a lot of my own time being resistant to prosody and metrical scansion. Don't do that. It's an idiot thing. I made a huge mistake being, dug in about that. And afterwards I needed it and I had to teach myself. Whereas I had one quarter where there's this guy from Dublin who knows a whole bunch more than me about prosody and scansion, and I just acted like kind of a butt about that. I thought that's too rigid. That was a waste of time. And the other is on the opposite end. There couldn't have been anything more extravagantly weird, different, unbelievable. I couldn't anticipate that we were even allowed to write these kinds of things. Eastern European poets in translation. Nance had us reading Vasco Popa, Tomasz Solomon, and some Northern poets too, Scandinavians like Tomas Transtromer. Holy cow. I mean, and I'd never heard of them, didn't have any idea. And if she hadn't given us a reading list with those people on it, I would have missed something amazing. So I can't recommend Eastern European poets in translation enough, especially Vasco Popa and Tomasz Solomon.
I think the advice that sticks with me is pretty similar to that, where I think it was one of the first things that Chris had said in one of our meetings for the small press, that he wanted to know that we were reading and reading other poets and reading other work that was out there, and not just um, closing our minds, I guess, to some of the other work that was out there, but also uh, so that we would have an open mind for some of the manuscripts that were coming in that we would have to look at and judge for some of the prizes and things like that. So I've always felt that after that, my reading increased, even though I thought, I'm a total reader. I read all the time, but it just kind of made me aware that, well, I need to be reading more and a different variety of poets so that it can both educate me on what other people are doing and how to do some of these things that I'd never heard of, but also inform and inspire my own work.
It's been like 20 years since I've been in the program, but I use like what I learned in the program and what I read like all the time. It's like such a part of me. So I like this question. I did the poetry track, obviously, and the three professors then, I'm not sure who's there now, is Nance Van Winkle, Jonathan Johnson, and Chris Howell. And what I thought was really fascinating was they had us reading such different types of books. And they taught so differently, and it was just remarkable to go through each of those three different minds and I remember things distinctly from each of them. Like Nance told us once, like I think 4 weeks into the quarter or this semester, I forget, that we were all writing competent poems, and she wanted us to like try something beyond competence. And so then everyone started writing really like desperate, edgy poems, and I thought that that was great. And we were like allowed to sort of play around. And then think Christopher Howell taught me about the sophistication of concision, which has never left me. And I just think that's an elegant way to write. Getting back poems with like whole words, just taken away. Like I found it really liberating and beautiful. Jonathan Johnson was amazing too. I just remember specifically at a party once, he made everyone answer the question, "What's the worst thing you've ever done?" Which doesn't really relate to writing, but I thought it was amazing and I use it all the time. And then my out of genre workshop with Greg Spatz like revealed to me that I was able to write fiction, which I thought was great. And ended up writing a novel, and yeah, he exposed me to a lot of authors that I never would have heard of if I hadn't taken that workshop. So
Great. I'll just echo all of those. The same poets that Kimberly just listed were the professors when I was there as well. And because I'm the fourth person to comment, I've been able to jog my memory and have something for each one. This one's embarrassing, but I remember when I was in Nance's class, she would say, "Well, how do you feel about this poem?" Or "What about this?" And I would think, "I don't know that word." Or I was like, I didn't really know what that meant. And she said, "Sonny, get a dictionary, like look up stuff." And I thought, well, that's pretty elementary. I don't know why I didn't think to do that. I do that all the time. I look up words that I even know, but I want to make sure. And I tell my students, if there's any question at all, look up words so that you can be sure what they are and you can collect and you can remember better. So nictitating, I remember that word came up in a class with Jonathan and he knew what it was. And I realized he'd probably looked it up before class. So that was really smart. So it just helps your catalog of words. Jonathan Johnson taught me something that I found really useful as a teacher, which is I said, "I just love it when you take your glasses off and you clean them and you slowly put them back on. You just look so thoughtful." And he said, "I do that because I'm thinking, what am I going to say? I have to stall." So I've done that in class too. That was a really helpful technique. So thank you to Jonathan for that. And then Chris, I think, as what other people have said, has introduced me to some really, really helpful poets that I would not have found on my own. I remember he read my work and said, "I think you'd really like Antonio Machado." And I fell in love with Antonio Machado, his philosophy, his Spanish spirit. He's a romantic. He's just a beautiful poet. I don't think I would have really found him on my own, or it would have been years. So appreciative of the connections they made. And then one more, in the summer, we did a workshop in Idaho, a bunch of EWU grads, and we worked with Marvin Bell, and he gave a piece of advice that I found incredible. He gave a bunch of advice, but this is the one that stuck with me. He said, "Don't be afraid to write a poem that at least one person in the room is going to hate." That seemed very useful, so that I wasn't writing toward appeasing people or appealing to everybody, which is impossible. Like being able to try new things and assume someone's going to hate it and oh well. So it was really liberating.
All right. So I'll go through. Same three poets were there when I was there. And I think I was really influenced quite a bit by Jonathan Johnson's connection to place. We went on we had a literature of the Northwest course, and we kind of went on a field trip, I guess you would call it, and went around and traveled, and you can see that in his own writing and also in the way he teaches. But it was really nice to just kind of see that connection with place and what I was reading, and which really, like, everything I write is connected to place. And that was a huge takeaway for me. And Nance, I remember specifically in class her talking about find that thing that you do that is different and kind of unique to you in your writing, and then push the envelope on it just a little bit more. Like just push that and keep following it. And and I liked that. I thought that was really good advice. And then, like Chris Howell, I really appreciated how he showed that you can feel your way through a poem. And one of the classes that he taught that had a huge influence on me, even though I don't even actually think I was taking it for credit, because I had this horrible habit of taking too much stuff at once, but his surrealism course, and I've always really gravitated towards surrealism, and just so much of what we read in there really resonated. And especially I found the Spanish surrealists in that class, and they are just my favorite. Um, and also I stumbled into projects that I wouldn't have, that are I'm still kind of working over and thinking about, just combining. Just I happened to be taking a ceramics class with Sunny at the same time that I was taking Chris Howell's literary editing class, and we had a final project to make books, and I made them out of clay and just went totally out there with this idea of encountering like the sculptural form to get to the text. And I appreciated that Chris was all on board with it. And I think that the fact that he got excited about it made me more excited about it. And everything I guess from Eastern, like I really appreciated the sense of community, and that's something that I've taken with me and I think about often still. So
Awesome. Awesome. I love hearing, obviously Nance Van Winkle is no longer an instructor here, but Jonathan and Chris Howell still are. And so it's great to hear that instructors that were like really impactful while you were here are still really affecting students. They're still teaching and still forming new writers. So it's awesome. Even though I haven't really taken any of their classes yet as a fiction student. So we'll see how that goes. Awesome. Yeah. So this is another like, maybe like a more personal and more open question, but how have your writing goals changed since graduation? Maybe a comparison to what you had in mind, when you walked across the stage and when you were graduating, compared to now for some of you many, many years later. So I'd love to hear about that.
I don't think I walked, and my parents were mad at me about that. I'll tell you this too. My parents, two Capricorns. And if you're into horoscopes, astrology at all, you know what that is. I am a Cancer, the exact opposite. So when you say, what were my goals and what were my thoughts about my goals as I was standing in one place at one time, and can I remember? No, that would have been my mom and dad. I think I would have had, ideas, vague otherwise. But I tell you, I still don't know if it's a goals thing with me. But and it's 33 years since I graduated. One of the things that happened though for me after was I sort of walked backwards into the oral tradition, and I think that's huge. And it's not anything that I was really aware that I was thinking about at the time, making it a goal of mine while in my MFA, or even a goal afterwards. But the oral tradition is massively huge for me. And then I guess another thing is I don't know that it was a goal of mine to continue to write and write and write and write for the rest of my life. It's just something that I really like doing, and I've ended up doing it. But it seems to me that maybe if that's something that you worry about, make it a goal to keep doing it, right? Write it down if that's what goal people do. Because it's easy, like I said, I know a lot of people who just stop. Don't be one of those people. And if making that a goal outright is the way that you keep going, then make it a goal outright. I want to say one other thing, since Sonny brought up Marvin Bell. And I didn't hear Marvin Bell while I was in Spokane, but in Tacoma at Pacific Lutheran University one time, and I've never forgotten this. Something he said, kind of offhandedly at a reading, and I don't even think it was in the Q&A. I think it was just something he said between poems. And memorable, all right, because I was about 21 years old when I heard it, and I'm not 21 now. Um, he said, I like poems whose ideas have their feet in the dirt. And amen, absolutely. And it blows the doors off Ezra Pound, and his thing about go in fear of abstraction, using abstract words in order to come up with a concrete idea. This is actually concrete. Bell says, I like poems whose ideas have their feet in the dirt. And I think that maybe that's not my goal in that kind of goal sort of way, but I absolutely want poems that are accessible, understandable, whose ideas had their feet in the dirt. And I suppose if I hadn't heard him say that, maybe I would have been too fancy otherwise. So that saved me a whole lot of time. Just that one thing he said once a long time ago.
Well, I think my my goals have changed quite a bit since graduating. I think kind of more immediately after graduating, I kind of got caught up in this idea that I wanted to include writing in my career for sure. So I wanted a job related to writing, and I kind of jumped into the journalism side of things, working for a small newspaper with the Colville tribes out in Grand Coulee. And then from there, I came back to Spokane and was writing for the Journal of Business for quite a while. And I think there's just something different about journalism, that it's somewhere more fast paced, and I just kind of got caught up in writing as more of a business thing that I could occasionally pull some creativity into. And I think after a while it just seemed like it wasn't quite the right fit for what I wanted to do with my writing. I didn't want it to be quite so career driven and so fast paced, and I wanted to be able to slow down a little bit more and focus on the fun creative side again. So that's when I kind of pivoted all my job stuff entirely and went back to creative performing. I was a mermaid for a while and just doing a freelance thing, and just I guess my another kind of goal was always to try to publish my collection. So that's also kind of around the time where I just went back to some of my old stuff, some of the stuff that I had worked on in my thesis, and then some stuff that some friends from the program were still helping me workshop, and kind of reset that goal of, well, I always wanted to publish some of this and get it out there and into the right home. So let's do that. Let's just, I think it's probably just kind of a seasons of life thing where you gotta kind of find your niche.
Yeah, so when I graduated, I was 24, and I think what I wanted out of my life was to publish a couple books of poems. Um, and I'd heard the advice that like you shouldn't try to publish your thesis, you're not ready yet, you're just practicing in those poems, and that was really helpful for me. And one of our professors had said something like, plan to publish your first book like 10 years after the program. And I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but it just gave me a lot of freedom and relaxation. And so I was just like, okay, well, what do I want to do? And I just wanted to experience everything and go everywhere and just have a really full, rich life. So yeah, I knew for sure I didn't want any creativity or writing in my day job. I wanted to keep it really separate so that when I was writing books of poems, they would just be just private and precious to me, I guess. Like I've always seen it as a very solo, private sort of thing that I haven't wanted to be paid for or share with others in like a corporate way, or I don't know. It's just sort of how I've kept it special to me. So I've always just gotten like day jobs and then just tried to have a really stimulating, exciting life. And I live in Brooklyn now, which is great. And I was coming up on that 10-year mark. I was like going to turn 34. So I started submitting my manuscript that I had at the time to like first book contests. And that's when I published my first book, which is great. So I made the deadline that I don't remember who gave me, and then after that, my goal was to just publish like another book, at least 5 years later. So those are just like the ways I think about it to make sure that I'm sort of staying on track with it and continuing to write. So, yep.
I love that. Mine was pretty similar. Like Rob, I am also Cancer, so I don't know enough about the signs. But if that means you didn't have plans and you were just kind of winging it, that's exactly what I was doing. My only real goal was that I wasn't going to stop writing. and then I kind of did for a short time, but I'll echo what Kimberly said. So I graduated from EWU 22 years ago, and I was 23. So no, I was 25. Now I've given you my age, but anyway. So I was like mid-20s, and I just needed to make some money because I was broke and figure out how I wanted to keep writing. The thing that really changed for me is I recognized that the things that I was writing in graduate school kind of stunk. I wasn't even interested in it. I was trying to be too intellectual. I was trying too hard to be like other people too, to imitate, I think, too closely poets that I didn't really understand what they were doing or why. So I just kept reading, and I gravitated toward the things that I enjoyed reading, and I started writing more like that. And just like Kimberly said, I just kept living my life and thought, I guess I'll just write poems that come out of my life. And that is the best thing that I could have ever decided to do. Not that I only write about my life, but I agree with Rob too, that my poems stopped being intellectual and just started being in the dirt. So I have very, very physical poems now, and I'm more excited and energized by that than anything else. So my style changed quite a bit. And a lot of that is just who I read year after year after year. And I'm so grateful for those people. So I don't remember I was going with this, but just don't stop writing. That was huge. I remember, and I'll end with this. When Get was going on, and it hadn't been going on for too many years, and a panel came, and we were graduate students, and said, what advice do you have for us? So the tables were turned a little bit. I was a student. I was asking someone else, what did you do after you graduated? And they said, of everybody in our cohort, I'm one of 2 people that didn't stop writing. And I remember thinking, how did you spend 2 years getting your graduate degree, like this MFA that is so precious and all this money and time? Why would you stop writing? But it is so easy. It's so easy to stop. So that is something that I've always kept with me and thought, I'm just going to keep going. And I too thought, well, I'll eventually publish a book. And then I realized, hey, if you just keep writing, you have more books to publish. Go figure. So I've kept doing that too. So if you keep going, you just have endless material, and it continues to be exciting for you as a poet.
I don't remember what my goals were when I finished, but I do remember, I mean, I guess I do. The reason why I did an MFA, I wasn't actually thinking about anything that practical, like what I'm going to do for work. Even maybe just a little, like I just felt like it'll help for me to get a master's degree. But I, which I didn't understand at the time, was what I was doing was also a terminal degree, which I understood later. And but I wanted to just get better at poetry, and I wanted to do nothing but poetry for 2 years and just be surrounded by other writers and just do that, like, and that and to really like just dive in. And so and I can looking back and like what I was doing after graduation, I stressed my parents out, I think, because, and I don't know if this is a Pisces thing or not, since we're talking about that, but I didn't try to find a job. I was like, I'm gonna go travel around, and I'm going to Alaska, and then I'm gonna go do this, and my parents are like, you just got your master's degree, when are you gonna look for a job? So and I do feel really lucky that I have a job that I love, that I tried out teaching, and that I ended up loving it. And now I feel like my goals are just finding pockets of time and, growing my tomatoes and geeking out over my dahlias and being able to write about those things and spending time with my kids. And it feels like, my definition of time and my relationship with it is so different now. And so it's just like, just finding those moments and trying to slow things down. And I'm so grateful to have poetry in my life. Like the last, I feel like this is a non-answer to the question, but I feel like the last few weeks, like just poetry's been such a saving grace, and just to be able to go to it and to be able to go into the classroom and talk about poems, and then also just to have it in my own life. And so, um, yeah, and good stories too, not just poetry. I finished Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange a couple nights ago, and I just sat there and cried for 20 minutes and I just had to sit with it. And I just, man, the power of stories and the oral tradition, all of it. So I think just holding on to what you love, and I don't know.
It's
That's
really
all.
it's really refreshing to hear the goals of poets compared to the goals of fiction writers. They're, we have such different goals for things. This is not at all what a panel of 5 fiction writers would have said. And as an Aries, I have huge goals that I will probably never accomplish. So just along those lines. So we don't have a lot of time left, but I do want to ask one last question. As folks who all of you did this program in particular, some of you work at other schools, what would you say to anyone who is on the fence about applying to an MFA program? For anybody who is curious if it's worth the time, or they're just not sure if it's a good fit for them, do you have anything you would say to them?
Yeah. If you're gonna, let's say you decide not to, if you think that years from now, having made that decision, you're going to regret it, then don't waste your time and do it now. And in fact, if you're thinking, well, maybe I should take a little bit of time off between my BA and MFA, there's a good chance that you're going to drift. And I say that as a person who works at a commuter college and non-traditional students, and the ones who think, well, I need the money from work in order to pay the tuition, so I'll go for a while and then I will earn some money and then I'll come back. That's that's not what happens. I mean, they have demographic information, statistical information that says most of the people who do not finish or take time off do not come back and finish later. So if you're on the fence and you're going to regret not going, then you should go. I'll tell you this too. If I had not done that, then I probably would not have been a writer. And I probably would not have had experiences one after the other that were good, including, for instance, winning a contest from terrain.org, which led to the editor asking me to write him a guest blog. And I said, no, because I don't know what a blog is. And he said, just do it. And then afterwards, I sent him, while I was waiting to hear, a second thing. And he said, I like them both. What should we call your series? Meaning that he asked for one thing, and I ended up getting assigned a series. And now this is this journal, terrain.org. But not only did I keep writing in the style, the Book of Sharks emerged from this, from winning that contest. I submitted that to the Robinson Jeffers Torhouse Foundation Award, won that too. I got to go to a place that I wanted to travel just as a literary celebrant pilgrim. I got to read there. Because of that, I got to tour the grounds. I got to go up the top of Hawk Tower, sitting there on this granite that he brought up from the beach, looking out at the Pacific Ocean, while, no kidding, hawks did fly around me. That had never happened in my life if I hadn't done this. So you don't know what'll happen if you don't go, but you do know that if you don't go, you might regret it, then go.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think I had a little bit of a different answer planned originally, but based on some of what Rob said, it reminds me one of the years that I was in undergrad, I was taking uh an English class from a professor, and I had kept hearing all these students that were about to graduate that were asking him about well, should I apply to grad school? And I had noticed that, I hadn't heard a whole lot about anyone going to grad school. So I had come up to him after class the one day and said, well, what's the process like for that? What should I be looking into that? And he said, well, honestly, I really don't think that you're the type that would want to pursue grad school. And so after that, I was like, okay, well, now I'm really interested. And I'm even kind of like, oh, I'm gonna stick it to you, man. Like, what? Okay. So that started me on my journey of looking into grad school. And I thought, well, this to me seems like a really great opportunity to improve my writing and open some doors for if I wanted to go the creative route, if I wanted to go the teaching route. It just seemed like even reading about programs like the one in Spokane, that there would just be so much more open to me if I was just willing to go through even the small steps to apply. And I really do feel like having been part of the program that it really did change my life because I had to move from my small town and smaller cities to a completely unknown place and make all new friends and kind of start over in a sense, but also it was the start of this amazing journey and learning more about myself and my writing and also new things that would help me in my career. And I felt inspired to open that door that, you know, someone who didn't really know me all that well would have just been like, oh, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's for you. And so if it's you telling yourself that, or if it's someone else that's saying, there's this, that, and the other reason why you maybe shouldn't, I would just encourage you to reconsider it for sure.
Yeah, I think for some people they should, and for some people they shouldn't. I think it depends on what you're looking to get out of it. I was 22. I applied on a lark. Eastern's the only place I applied because they had a late deadline. It was the only one I was going to make. I was like living in Haiti. It was very random. I'd only written like 7 poems in my life, and those are the ones I submitted. And I didn't know who to read. I didn't know anything. So I think if that's where you're at, it's perfect. Because it's just basically people telling you what to read and explaining the books to you, and people reading your writing and improving your writing. Like, it's perfect. I think Spokane is such a cheap place to live. You can get in-state tuition. Like, you can do the MFA program without going into crazy debt. And it's not like a showboat MFA program. Like, it's chill, and you can, yeah, I just think it's ideal, and it's not a huge risk to take like some of the other more famous programs where you might not get the attention that you need. And I don't know, there's so many other factors. So I think I wouldn't do like a high risk MFA program like where it's in like some famous, I don't know. I'm not referencing anything specifically, but I think like the instructors at Eastern are just so wonderful, and it's just a very, what am I trying to say? Like a relaxed environment to like learn and focus in. And it's also a small town and get 4 seasons. So yeah, I couldn't recommend Eastern anymore.
I'll piggyback off that. I only applied to a few different graduate school programs, which now I think is, I don't know, maybe that was dumb, but I got into the one that I was supposed to. And I thought, where could I live? There were places that I thought it's probably got a good program, but I literally could not live there. But I knew I could live in Spokane, and I knew that the professors there were down to earth, and I liked their writing. So I think that was a good match. Just as a plug too, people have said, make sure that I think that the advantage of an MFA is that you're exposed to writers you probably wouldn't have come across on your own, movements that I think are in over your head if you're trying to educate yourself alone. You're looking at experts who have been writing and studying poetry for years. Why not tap into that expertise? My life is totally different because I had those 3 professors that were such an imprint on the way I approach poetry. The last thing I'll say too is you meet a community of people that make a difference in your life, and you recognize that you don't just sit and write poetry alone and then try to publish it alone. A lot of poetry and a lot of the writing world is networking. And I don't mean networking in the dirty sense. I mean in the sense that you build community and you read other people's work and you review it, and they read yours and they review it, and you recognize that you're an active participant in a community of poets. And I just think it's really difficult to figure out how to do that. You can do it on a community level, but it's just built in with an MFA, and you learn the strategies of doing that. So it's made all the difference in my life. Always a plug for an MFA, and especially at Eastern.
So I mentioned this already, but the reason why I wanted to do an MFA was to work on my writing. So if you're on the fence and that's something you want to do, then jump in and do it. And I just, I wouldn't have found, like Rob had mentioned, those list of poets that got put on this, the reading list, and the same thing. There are so many poets and writers I wouldn't have found if I hadn't done this MFA program and the community. And I had so much fun. Like I really just enjoyed my time and fell in love with Spokane. And honestly, I don't know that I would have had fun somewhere else. Maybe I would have, but I feel like that's one thing about Eastern, is that the community aspect was really strong, that literary community, and I'm grateful to still feel connected to it, and also to take that with me and to try to build a good community where I'm at. So and wherever I go. So having been, I don't know about the job market these days, like if you, but as far as like wanting to be a better writer, like absolutely, the MFA will help so much. So that's it.
I want to say that I remember family asking me when I was 18, just starting community college, "Oh, you like writing? Are you going to go? Eastern has that MFA. Are you ever going to go take that?" And I remember my 18, 19-year-old self telling them, "I don't know. You can teach yourself to write. You just keep writing, you'll learn." And I wasn't wrong. I spent the next 14 years writing novels. But now that I'm here and I'm in this program, there's really something to be said for your entire life revolving around writing. That there's so few other opportunities in your life where everything you do is around your art. And so that's been really valuable for me so far. I have grown a lot as a writer in just a quarter and a half. I'm shocked. And I also think, in case anybody who's watching is here in Spokane, if you're here already, it doesn't hurt. Apply, get some more information, talk to some alumni. It's been a really awesome program. I'm really excited for the rest of the program with me. So awesome. Well, it's been really great talking to everybody. You guys had some amazing answers for everything. And it's so insightful to hear how everybody's careers, there's so many common threads, and it's also so different. So we really appreciate you guys answering our questions today and doing our reading for us. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, Emily, for leading such a great conversation. That was really wonderful. These festival events, of course, are always inspiring, but this was extra special for me and for us here in the MFA. It's just so nice to remember that we are part of this larger cohort beyond just our own 2 years, and that not much has changed at Eastern over the last 3 decades, which is a little comforting as well. I loved hearing all of the little anecdotes and advice, and I really appreciated what you all said about continuing to write. I happen to be one of those sad folks that Rob and Sunny and others mentioned who did stop writing post MFA. I won't completely blame my arts organizing job, which again, just to note, I would never have gotten without the MFA program. But all of you just offered such inspiring and thoughtful advice that I think is going to help me and many others who were not as good at keeping up our routines post MFA. So thank you again for that, and for sharing your beautiful poetry with us tonight. That was also really wonderful to hear. And thank you also to Mackenzie, GetLit's assistant coordinator, for all of their hard work today and behind the scenes leading up to this event. To everyone watching at home, I hope that you'll join us for more festival events, both in person and here on Zoom. Please visit our website, getlitfestival.org, for our full schedule and more information about all of our authors, including today's talented poets. Thank you again for joining us, everybody. Goodbye.